Okay, recording's going.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us to talk about 3 points of contact. When we take a look at the losses that come through in our workers' comp program, we like to identify the causes of those different events as they come in, as well as what we think, are the preventative measures. And that way, as we do this process of analyzing these events, we're able to share with you best the ways to help keep your employees and yourselves safe on the job. In past years, as we've looked at this, when we're talking about 3 points of contact, the events, the injuries that we are preventing are falls, generally, where someone either stumbles and twists an ankle or they actually slip and fall down. And that usually we may be looking at, and 12% of all of our claims that come through our system are those slip and falls. And even more when we look at the severity of those claims, when we actually look at the cost of those incidents, about 24% of our total incurred, may be just from those slip and fall events. Slip and falls, the injuries that we see generally look like sprains and strains on kind of the light side, but they can also often result in broken bones, spinal injuries, torn ligaments, and even head injuries, which is kind of scary because those are the ones that can really be potentially fatal. And we've seen some really bad ones over the years. So obviously these are events that we want to be able to prevent. And as we look at these slip and fall events, we find that a lot of them could easily be prevented by using the simple rule of 3 points of contact. In fact, just so far this year, in the first 4 months of 2021, we've seen incurred losses on events that could have been prevented using 3 points of contact to the tune of over $83,000. So it really does add up in a hurry, and it is something that we do see with great frequency and regularity. These come into play when we're talking about the injured worker either was hurt while they were climbing up into something or on something or getting down off of something. And generally, we're looking at equipment, whether it's getting in and out of a truck or a front end loader, using a ladder to climb up or down from something. Sometimes it's even just getting in and out of your regular passenger cars or pickup trucks, where we get out and fall as we're exiting the vehicle as well. Those can be really common. And in addition to ladders, even stairs, we see falls on stairs frequently, which could possibly be prevented with using, that 3 points of contact while you're going up and down stairs as well. When we talk about 3 points of contact, one thing that came to my mind that's really important is making sure that we make it a habit. Just like anything else, if we don't do it every time, we probably won't be doing it the one time that we need it to prevent an accident. And so it's really important that every time we get up into that piece of equipment or climb up on something, and every time we climb down, from that piece of equipment or enter or exit that cab, we want to make sure that we are using this tool, this 3 points of contact, and that it just becomes a habit and use it every time. What is 3 points of contact? Well, this basically tells us that as we are mounting or dismounting a piece of equipment or climbing a ladder or something like that, that we always have at least 2 hands and 1 foot in contact with a surface, a handhold or a foothold, or 1 hand and 2 feet. So as you climb, just kind of think about, I have 2 hands while I'm moving my feet that are hanging on to a handhold. Or if I'm moving my hand up to another handhold, then I've got 2 feet in place. That way, if you're less likely to slip and fall in that situation. But if you do slip, you've got a lot of ability to support yourself and to lessen that fall or to catch yourself without falling. Really good rule to make sure that we use personally, and also that we help our coworkers and those around us to remember to use as well, that it needs to be a habit every time. Another thing that comes into play when we're talking about 3 points of contact is especially when we're dismounting that piece of equipment. When I've looked at the events that have happened so far this year that were involved with mounting or dismounting a piece of equipment, the vast majority of them, probably about 85% of the injuries occurred while dismounting. That tends to be kind of the more dangerous situation, is when we're climbing down. We fall as we're climbing down, or we get to the ground and we slip or have an unexpected surface that we're stepping onto, which often results in rolling an ankle or twisting a knee and then falling down as well. So some of the things we really need to be thinking about as we're mounting and dismounting equipment is the conditions, the ground terrain, that we're getting out to. What is it? Is it muddy? Is it slick? Is it snow or ice? Are there holes or rocks that we're stepping down onto? Because often those things, if we don't see them or prepare for them ahead of time, and if we don't lower ourselves gradually down off that last step to make sure we have a good footing before we put all of our weight on our foot, that often results in that twisted ankle, twisted knee, or that fall to the ground. And so snow, ice, uneven ground is a big contributor to falls when we're dismounting equipment. And often too, it could be even curbs and gutters. We see this frequently in the fire service as firefighters are responding to a call and they dismount that fire apparatus, and it's parked next to a curb, and they step down kind of on the transition between the curb and gutter, and that often results in a fall. Carrying objects also as we are mounting or dismounting that piece of equipment is a problem, because if you have something in your hands or in your arm, it prevents you from using both of your hands as you are climbing down. So you can't have that 3 points of contact as you're climbing or dismounting if one of your hands is occupied with something. So a really good habit is also to make sure that any objects that we are taking with us, that we set them on the floor or on the seat, before we get out, and then we can grab them and take them once we're on the ground, and vice versa when we're mounting the equipment as well, to put it up in there first and then mount, the ladder and get in and move the equipment to a safe location. So also, we get really complacent. When you get in and out of the cab of your loader, your backhoe, your truck, so many times a day, dozens of times perhaps, sometimes we get really complacent with how we do that. Maybe we just kind of like run down the rungs like they're stairs, or even jump down. We get in a hurry sometimes. And those often, even though it feels like we're, being quicker and more efficient, that complacency will eventually lead to some sort of fall, because the conditions are always going to be different as we get down off of that piece of equipment. So be really careful, make it a habit, do it the same way every time with the 3 points of contact, and avoid being in a hurry as you're getting in and getting out of that equipment. Stairways are another place where we see a lot of falls. And we can use 3 points of contacts in stairways as well. Again, it becomes important to be careful, when we're carrying things. Obviously, if you're carrying something, you can't use both hands to grab, the rails on either side. Maybe you can only grab one. But another thing that carrying a load on stairs does is blocks your view of where you're walking. And so that also often leads to falls on stairways. Often, whether we're mounting or dismounting a piece of equipment, or just coming down a ladder or walking down stairways, it's that last step that we, fail to anticipate properly sometimes, and we'll fall off that last step thinking we already got to the bottom or something like that. So it's really important to be able to see those steps as we're going down them. And another thing that's really important is to keep all stairways clear of obstacles. Don't stack books or tools or things on the stairway. When someone's coming down that stairway, especially if they've got something blocking their view, they can easily trip and fall on those things. So look for obstacles on stairways and make sure we remove them if we do find them there. Be careful. Just go down one step at a time and don't miss that last step. Ladders is another area where we're mounting and dismounting a piece of equipment. And so 3 points of contact applies to our ladder safety as well. Again, if you're carrying something with you in one hand while you're climbing a ladder, you're going to have those moments, where you don't have the 3 points of contact while you're climbing. And so make sure that you climb and descend ladders with your hands free, and then have your tools and equipment or supplies, passed up and down from there. Be real careful, don't jump down. And this is whether you're mounting or dismounting a front end loader, a truck, a ladder, or stairs. Let's make sure that we, gradually and carefully lower ourselves down, especially off that last step. So often we read the descriptions in these injury claims that come through, and it says employee jumped down. Sometimes they jump down off the back of a trailer or jump down, out of the cab of their truck, and that's when the injury occurs. So never jump as you're dismounting any piece of equipment. And don't skip that bottom rung, and make sure you're careful to know when you're on that bottom rung or at the final step there. Be really careful. And this kind of sounds like ladder safety too, but one of the things we see with falls from ladders when we get above that top rung or that second to the top rung is we are no longer able to have 3 points of contact on the ladder. And same thing goes when you use a box or a chair to stand on to reach something up high. You are, mounting something where you can't have 3 points of contact, and the surface isn't designed for you to be on it like that. So never stand on a chair, and don't never stand on the top 2 rungs of a ladder, because you can't have your 3 points of contact on that piece of equipment when you do that. When we're talking about falls from that piece of equipment, especially when we're talking about heavy equipment, loaders and backhoes and other things like that, it could be a track hoe, make sure that we have the proper footwear. Do you need to have your safety shoes on? Do you need to have something with appropriate traction for the terrain where you're getting out of? And so make sure you've got the right footwear on. Whenever you're climbing up into the cab of that truck or that tractor, make sure you're facing the cab when you do that. When we face away and we kind of go down, like it's a stairway instead of a ladder, and we do this sometimes on ladders too, where we face the wrong way, then again, we can't maintain that 3 points of contact, and it's much easier to have a serious fall. Always face the cab, slow down, especially, where we're in adverse condition. If it's wet, if it's snowy, it's ice, if the ground's likely to be slippery or uneven, we want to cautiously lower ourselves down that last step and make sure we've got a good firm footing on the ground before we let go of our handholds. Make sure you use those handholds that are designed to be handholds, as well as the rungs, the footholds that you're using as well. Be careful not to climb on the tires or hubs or other parts of the piece of equipment that aren't really designed to be a handhold or a foothold. You're going to slip off of those much easier than you do if you're using the proper mounting device. And often we see trailers, getting in and out of trailers can be really difficult because they don't have steps sometimes and handholds for getting up in there. And so it may be really important, if you do find yourself climbing on and off of trailers frequently, to have maybe a step ladder or something that helps you get in and out of that piece of equipment. And again, as you're getting down, be very careful to use those 3 points of contact if possible, and have that maybe a step ladder available to you so that you're not just jumping down from the trailer. Because again, we see a lot of really serious injuries from people as they are getting off of those trailers. Make sure that if the rungs that you're climbing are slippery, that we address that. Maybe we can apply some non-slip material, or some other repairs so that those rungs aren't slippery. And same goes for your shoes as well. Make sure you've got good traction. Keep both hands free. Place your gear on the floor or on the seat as you're mounting or dismounting so that your hands are free. Don't ever jump down. Again, don't use those tires, hubs, or other things that are not designated, footholds as you're climbing up. and make sure you keep those rungs clean and clear, as well as your feet. I mentioned fire service a little bit. We do see a lot of employee injuries with firefighters mounting and dismounting the fire apparatus. So remember, these same rules apply on the fire apparatus as well. Make sure you use that 3 points of contact. Make sure that you keep your hands free. Make sure that you're not jumping down as you're getting on and off of that piece of equipment. So in summary, let's make 3 points of contact, the 3 of 4 rule, a habit. Every time we're climbing or climbing up or climbing down, let's make sure we use that 3 points of contact. Be aware of the conditions you're climbing down to, whether they're icy, slippery, uneven, because that's where we get, caught off balance quite a lot when we let go of the handholds hitting that last hitting the ground, and then it's uneven or it's slippery. Make sure you're inspecting your steps and your handholds. Face the cab as you're climbing up and climbing down every time, and distribute the weight between your hands, your arms, and your legs as you're lowering yourself down from that equipment. Because if you do have a slip, if you're prepared, bearing some of that weight with your arms, you can catch yourself much better. And again, never jump down from a truck or a trailer or any other piece of equipment. Always climb down carefully. Do we have any questions?
Folks, if you've got any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat box and we'll answer those right now. Find the chat box and just type it in there. It's pretty simple thing. Boy, Doug, it seems like a pretty simple subject. You think, well, that's kind of dumb. That's kind of easy, 3 of 4. But it's a big deal, isn't it? It's, I think of just dozens of claims that we see every year, and many of those are serious.
In fact, Jason, as I was going through, just kind of doing an analysis on the claims that have happened so far year to date, it was probably one of the most frequently reoccurring, preventative measures that I identified that could have prevented the injuries that I was looking at. And that's, why we decided to address this topic again today. We all need to remember it. We need to make sure it's a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Not seeing any questions there, but yeah, absolutely. That's, as we see these things come in, it's like, well, this is a pretty simple fix if each of us would learn to do this every time as we're entering and exiting. And I know it's something that we have to ingrain in our minds. So, all right. I'm not seeing a question there. Brent, got anything to add?
No, great job.
Okay. Well, Doug, final word.
I would just remind you that this isn't just heavy equipment too. We see a lot of falls as people are exiting their regular passenger car or pickup truck. So as you're getting in and out of your vehicle, especially, in the icy weather and those times of year when the parking lots are a little slick, but anytime, this doesn't just apply to heavy equipment and ladders. It applies to getting in and out of your pickup truck every time as well. Be real careful when you're getting down to the ground. Make sure you've got a good footing before you let go of the vehicle.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug, so much. And remember the bed of your pickup truck as well. Just had to throw that one in there, but that's a really good. Yeah, anytime up and down. Thanks, folks, for attending today. We will have Brent on in just a few minutes to talk about preventing sewer backups. So you haven't signed up for that, go to utahtrust.gov and click on training and events, and you can sign up for that one. Thanks once again, Doug. Everybody, go out and have a safe day.